Welcome to Hometown Culture, your weekly Orlando Magic podcast, where your host Seth will be unpacking the news every week. Hello, welcome back to Hometown Culture podcast. My name is Seth, and today I'm going to be unpacking the Game 6 and 7 of the Magic Cavs series and looking at the second round matchups in the NBA playoffs as they are and the leads that we are seeing so far in those matchups. Alright, just getting started here. We're going to be going over Game 6 of the Magic Cavs series. What a close game this was, man. Oh my goodness. Definitely gave the last three games of the series were amazing to watch, just as from a basketball perspective. Even though Game 7 may not have gone the way that Magic fans like myself would have wanted, watching Game 5, 6, and 7, those were great games. And Game 6, out the gate, was pretty awesome. We had an amazing start to the game on the defensive side of the ball. Franz got it going early. He had, I believe, 14 points in the first quarter, or at least first half. And it was great. Unfortunately, Gary Harris was out of the starting lineup. Some people may be saying that was good for our team. I personally do not think that Gary Harris was the worst part about our team this series. I think for what he brought to the defensive end, he was great. But JR came in starting, and he did a great job holding his own in that starting position for Gary Harris. And, man, this was a great game. We had the first time ever, the first time since Kevin Durant, I believe it was Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook, we had three guys scoring 20 points, all 22 years or under in the playoffs on our team, with Jalen Suggs, Paolo Banchero, and Franz Wagner. And they did it on pretty good efficiency, I would say. Paolo, 45% from the field, 9 of 20. You had Franz shooting 7 of 16, Suggs shooting 7 of 16. Suggs, 6 of 13 from the three-point line. And, yeah, shots just seemed to be falling pretty well throughout certain stretches of this game. I will say that it was definitely a struggle containing the Cavaliers guards, which I think we saw come up again in Game 7. For what we had to do to force Game 7 at home, we were able to play with a lot of heart, play with a lot of we had a lot of hustle plays in this game, and I think that we just were the team that wanted more in Game 6, and Donovan Mitchell dropped 50 on us, and we still were able to contain the Cavs to under 100 points, which is amazing. Our second chance points, I believe it was 15-2 second chance points throughout the game. Just absolutely amazing battle for our team. I think that this game was definitely one on the defensive end, for sure. I think that both defenses played great, and that we were also greatly aided by the fact that Evan Mobley got hurt in game 6. Game 6, Evan Mobley was not moving the way he was before. He was not as explosive, which I think helped us greatly to be able to come back and take some take advantage of the inside a little bit more than we were able to in previous games or in Game 7, and yeah, it was just an amazing game. Amazing third quarter. We had an 8-0 run to cut the deficit to 1 in the third quarter. I will say we had a 53-49 lead going into halftime, lost the lead, I believe, and then went on a run trying to get back into the game. And like that, since that third quarter, the game was tight. Every play mattered. Fultz had some amazing read and amazing playmaking reads throughout the third quarter, and I mean, I think it just shows how great of a basketball mind Fultz can be. Do I know whether or not Fultz will be on this team come next season? I do not know, but Fultz really proved his value and proved that he, at the very least, has a spot on the roster somewhere in this league. I think, because I think he came up huge in some key moments. I think Cole Anthony came up huge. I think he was asked to finish this game in the fourth quarter, and for a guy who struggled really all season and all year, it was cool to see him making key plays. He didn't have a great game. He had 9 points. I think he had some poor shooting efforts, if I can check real quick. But yeah, Cole Anthony, 4 of 10 from the field. He had 9 points, and yeah, he wasn't like scoring the ball a ton. He wasn't like being super flashy with it, but he was doing the things that mattered. He was playing some good defense. He was making good shots and had some really cool. The points that he did score came in really key moments of the game. You saw that crazy spin move with the jelly floater. I believe I think it was the top of the fourth quarter. When we really needed it. And it's like things like that, like propelling the team to be able to be in a position to win, and like having those key plays that matter. I think that was huge for Cole Anthony. You saw him and Jalen Suggs after the game embracing and really soaking in the moment, and so yeah, I'm really happy for Cole Anthony, the way he had that game in game 6. Just unfortunate the way it ended in game 7, but we'll get there for sure. Forced a lot of turnovers in this game. We're able to force 13 turnovers. I believe we had 18 points off turnovers, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, it was just a great game to have the home crowd environment, and really be able to seize momentum at any moment with the crowd getting into it. I think that was huge in this game, and I think that's what ultimately propelled us to coming towards the end, and pulling out towards the end this game. And yeah, Donovan Mitchell, he is a great player. He showcased that in both game 5, 6, and 7. He has showcased his greatness, and boy, is it times like this where you kind of wish you just had a player like Donovan Mitchell on this team, because he is the shot creator that the Magic are missing for sure. And so just amazing to see how great Donovan Mitchell played, and just watching great basketball unfold in front of our eyes is just amazing. But love to see the only series going into game 7 was the Magic series, and I love to see the fight and the heart that these guys put out there. And yeah, let's go into game 7, talk about the positives and negatives of game 7, because I think that's where we can start having a lot more of our conversations. I think game 6 was great. We were able to have an amazing moment with the fans, amazing moment as a franchise going in getting game 7 off, and really putting the Orlando Magic on the map once again, But I think game 7, there's a lot more to talk about in terms of the flaws of this team, and I think also the potential moves coming in the offseason. So let's go there. So game 7 in Cleveland, come out to an amazing start. Honestly, don't think you could have come out to any better of a start than what you did in game 7. You got out to what was an 18-point lead at one point in the first half, and Cavs were able to cut it to 10, but you went into halftime with a 10-point lead, and this team in the first half just was hitting on all cylinders. Shots were falling. There was a confidence. There was a poise to this team, and there was an energy to this team where they were playing and really wanting this game. And I think the first half of game 7 is the best we've ever played on the road in this series, and I think that is something to look towards to see if we can maintain that type of play throughout an entire game. I think that as the Cavs began to come into their own, there was a stat, I think it was like the Cavs were on like a 47-22 run since like halfway through the second quarter. But like as the Cavs were coming into their own in that second quarter, things really started to become stagnant for the Magic, and I think that started on our offensive end and our defense. So let's talk about our offense real quick, because I think that's where a lot of this fell apart for the Magic here. So once again, I think similar vibes from Game 5. You saw a lot of Paolo isolation happening in the half court offense, and this team is not great in the half court. We don't have the personnel to run a good half court offense. I think that Jamal Mosley also needs to improve his abilities to coach a good offensive scheme in the half court, But as of right now, we have a team that doesn't have a real point guard, and a team that relies heavily on Paolo Banchero isolations in the half court, especially in these last two road games in Game 5 and Game 7. And yeah, it was not a pretty offense, and Isaac Okoro, credit to Isaac Okoro, Evan Mobley, because they really held their own against Paolo in that second half, for sure. But I think that in order to be able to have this team succeed, you need to have a more cohesive half-court offense when the game slows down and you're not getting what you want on the defensive end, some way to be able to score the ball on offense when you're in those predicaments. That's why I think like a Donovan Mitchell type is so crucial, because he can get you those buckets in moments where you're not really getting anything you want, right? And I think also part of this also falls onto Franz. I'm not going to blame Franz too much for this loss. I think that the energy going into the third and going into the fourth was a lot lower than our energy going into the start of the game. I think that we let our foot off the gas heavily, especially in that third quarter, and I just didn't see the same energy, the same poise, the same confidence in this team that I did in the first half. But Franz is definitely someone you look at as interesting, because this is a guy who you want to have as your second option. And I'm glad that Paolo still has confidence in him. I'm glad that Paolo still believes in him. I'm glad that this organization still believes in him, and I hope that he still believes in himself. He's a great player. He had an on and off season. He had some really good games. I don't think we should forget the good games that he had, like that 34-point performance in Game 4. And the 26-point game performance we saw in Game 6 too, right? So I don't think we should be overlooking that, but I think that is worth looking into with Franz, because you're looking at this guy who is up for his next contract and went 1 for 15 in Game 7, and yes, he's young. Yes, this is a young team. It's a first playoff berth ever. I mean, you see plenty of players who had their first playoff experience and it was a struggle, and now they're a lot better in the playoffs. I think Jared Allen is a good showing of that, for sure. I think that you look at players around the league like Karl Anthony Towns, who is really coming into his own this season for sure in the playoffs in this postseason. But I think it's worth looking into with Franz, with his new contract coming up, whether you believe in his value to be max money, because right now he has not played an all-star level. He's still giving you flashes of that all-star that he can become, but he's not been playing at a consistent all-star level, and it's a wonder to see, like, okay, is this guy worth max money looking towards the future, And Franz was a big factor in our offensive struggles. He went 1 for 15, like you said, and had some really close layup attempts that just hit the front of the rim, and came out. And so you gotta hope that next season he can bounce back, but it's definitely a point of concern for sure when you're looking at like who you're gonna have next to Paolo in these situations, and is Franz gonna be your number one guy, or if he's gonna, or not number one, but like your number two guy next to Paolo, or if he'll be like a 3 or 4 guy, you know. Like, I think it's worth having those types of conversations, and I think that this game was evident of that. But also, I don't want to overreact to a Game 7 performance on the road, especially when we've seen Franz put up amazing numbers throughout other times during this series. So I'm not gonna discredit Franz completely. I think it's worth looking into. But Franz, he had a great few games in this series, and I think that he can only improve from here. So I'm wishing for the best for Franz. But I think Franz definitely is one of the key reasons why we lost the game. I think also lack of shooting. I think a lot of the guys we have for shooting just weren't making shots. We've gone over Gary Harris and his shooting struggles. We've gone over I think Jalen Suggs has proven himself as a pretty reliable shooter this season, but at the same time he does have those nights where he can go. I think he went like 2 for 10 this in Game 7, you know. So I think that we need to find some more consistent shooting, which I think is what we can get into when we talk about our off season. But I think that we need to be able to look and pursue players who can shoot the ball, who can create their own shots sometimes, you know, off the dribble, whatever it may be, catch and shoot players. Players that can give you a spark when you're really struggling, like a Malik Monk, like a Buddy Hield, you know. I think those types of players are players that the Magic should be interested in pursuing, especially if you're going to commit to Franz and Paolo and Suggs being your core, which I think is the smart move to do. So we'll see what happens, but you got a lot of flaws here in the offensive side of the ball here, and a lot of it is going to be personnel based to fix, and I think a lot of it's also going to be just development and improvement from our players as well. But I definitely don't see the same group coming back next season. I think that there should be changes made, especially with how well Paolo's been improving from year to year at this point. So we'll see if Paolo can take another step next year, and if he does, I think that the front office should be have made moves, should be looking to make moves if they didn't during the trade deadline or something, you know, because if Paolo's going to continue to improve like this, I think that we need to prioritize helping him to be able to be the best that he can be, and give him the personnel that allows him to do that, not personnel that makes his job extremely hard, you know, going in the mid-range and being guarded by like 3 guys at once, you know. So I think there are definitely improvements to be made. I think personnel-wise, I think coaching-wise, Jamal Mosley just being able to develop more as a coach offensively. And then with the defense, I think defensively, I think we're solid. I think that we did have some struggles with fouling on defense. Defending without fouling was a struggle for us in Game 7, and I think that is something we can improve upon for sure. We play a physical brand of basketball, but also knowing and recognizing when to be able to play a physical brand of basketball, and also knowing when to not commit dumb fouls, you know. Like there are times in this game where I'm looking at these fouls being called that are blatant fouls, you know, and it's just coming off of reaches that aren't necessary, you know. I think there's like 2 from Gary Harris I saw in particular. I think one from Mo Wagner, where it's just like some slap downs, you know, that we can play better defense without all that, you know, and not having those unnecessary fouls that are going to add to getting earlier into the bonus for the Cavs and whatnot, or for whatever our opponent is. So I think fouling or defending without fouling is something that we need to work on. I think, yes, we want to play our physical brand of defense, of course, but knowing how to do that and when to be physical and when to not risk fouling. I think you saw that with plenty of guys getting into some foul trouble. You know, Franz Wagner came out in this game early, which I think probably did not help with his rhythm, you know, which is another point of why I'm not trying to be too harsh on Franz here, but yeah, we gotta learn how to defend without fouling in high stakes games, because I think that's something that we need to work on. That has been a struggle for us. When the stakes get higher, when there's more pressure on top, I think we tend to foul more. So I think that's something we need to work on for sure. At the end of the day, the Donovan Mitchell played a heck of a game, 39 points. At the end of the day, their role players really stepped up. Karis LeVert, Max Strus, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland hit a key shot at the end as well. Like, their guys stepped up, and ours kind of folded at the end here. So props to the Cavs for winning this series, and I definitely am interested to see if Donovan Mitchell stays or where he goes from here. After their predictable loss to the Celtics, I mean, they got pretty beat pretty badly in game 1 of that series, but that's neither here nor there. But it'll definitely be interesting to see where the Cavs go from here now that they've made it to the second round for the first time in the Donovan Mitchell era. And yeah, props to the Cavs. Also props to Paolo Banchero. I think that Paolo has shown now the world and put the world on notice that, hey, this Magic team is for real, and Paolo is for real. Like, I think that there definitely has to be a notice at this point about Paolo and Franz and Suggs and the whole Magic organization, and like how great of a team this was and how great of a player Paolo is becoming right now. And I think that Paolo still has a ways to grow, and that only makes me more excited, because if Paolo is near like fringe all NBA guy this season, then I can only imagine in the next like 3 to 4 years how great Paolo is going to be. And we definitely need to do everything in our power as the Orlando front office needs to do everything in their power, and the fans need to do everything in their power to keep this guy happy, keep this guy here long term. I know it is not completely in our franchise's history to having kept our stars here for super long periods of time or utilize them in the best ways. But I mean, we got to do better as a franchise with this guy, because I think there's definite potential here. I think we have a core here that has potential for sure. And I mean, like, we got to do everything we can. It is not uncommon to see nowadays. I mean, it is pretty rare, but it's not unnatural to see players being with the teams their entire careers up to this point. I mean, you got Giannis still in Milwaukee, at least for now. You got a player like Steph having literally like the golden opportunity in Golden State. But you got some players that have stuck around. Jokic in Denver, through ups and downs throughout their careers, and so I hope that we can be able to have a similar story with Paolo Banchero here, and we'll see what happens. But definitely wanna see that guy grow and see him become more of the player that we can see him becoming, more and more of that superstar MVP caliber player. So very excited for the future of this younger Orlando Magic team and this young budding superstar for sure. Now I'm going to talk about a brief synopsis over what I think the offseason is going to be looking like for this Magic team. And I have not watched the end of season interviews by Jeff Weltman and some of the players and Coach Jamal Mosley. So I will be looking into that this upcoming week, and I'll be giving my analysis on those interviews next week's episode. But so far we have some rumors instantly sprouting up. Of course, we have seen the idea of the Magic being suitors for Paul George. Trae Young, I believe, was also a name that was thrown out there. Malik Monk is a name that's being thrown out there. I think Tyus Jones is another name I've heard some people throw around. And I mean, we have assets. We have the ability to go out and get another good player. Zach LaVine's also another player that has been thrown around as well. for my liking, I do think that if we're going to go get another star, it's imperative that they are a 2 or 3 behind Paulo and maybe even behind Franz. But we'll see. I think that we definitely need that microwave type of player off the bench. I think Cole Anthony has been that in some of our games this season, but he has had a very up and down year and has not been the consistent six man that I think that a lot of us were hoping that he was going to be this season. I think that looking into a potential upgrade in that role, in the role of like having a guy who can come off the bench and give you either 12 to sometimes 30 points in a game, and be that fire off your bench, that microwave type player, I think that is very valuable. I think that Malik Monk fits that very, very well. I think Malik Monk is the ideal person you want to go after this offseason. In regards to players like Paul George or Zach LaVine, I think Zach LaVine would be a good fit offensively for this team. I'm not sure about the defense, how well bought in defensively a guy like Zach LaVine could be. It also doesn't necessarily solve our point guard issues. So I think that trying to get like a guy like Tyus Jones would be great for this team. I look at like Minnesota. I look at how they have a guy like Mike Conley. That's a guy like that type of player I think would be huge for this Magic team. Once again, we also have the potential of a guy like Anthony Black becoming the point guard that we need. So, like, we just need to see with development and all these things. But I think that in terms of getting new acquisitions, I think the guys you want to look at is guys like Malik Monk, guys like Tyus Jones, and then after that, maybe looking at a guy like Zach LaVine. I'm not entirely sure about Paul George. I'm not entirely confident that Paul George is even going to leave Los Angeles. And if he does leave Los Angeles, if it will be for Orlando or for like a team like Philly, So I think that it will be interesting for sure. Philly's definitely looking for a wing right now, so they'll probably be hunting hard for a guy like Paul George, maybe in like a DeMar DeRozan type, anyone who's better value than Tobias Harris at this point, But I think that the Magic desperately need a guard. I think a trade for like a guy like Anthony Simons would be huge if the Blazers were to budge on something like that, But I think the Magic definitely need a guard, and I think that in terms of just other production, I think we need to just improve offensive production across the board. Maybe get some shooters on this team. Definitely get some shooters. We're one of the worst shooting teams in the league. So definitely get some shooters. But yeah, I think guard play and shooting is where we need to go at. And I think that also development of players. I think that we need to help and hope that J.I. can develop a consistent 3-point shot. I think would be very helpful. I think like his corner three especially would be very helpful to spreading the floor. If we're keeping Wendell Carter Jr., hoping that he can stay healthy and contribute on both sides of the ball pretty well and contain the bigs that he's guarding and playing against, just seeing how he develops as a big and his shot making abilities and his abilities on the defensive end. And I think a guy like Anthony Black, like I said before, Anthony Black and Jet Howard are two rookies. Caleb Houston also. Those are three guys that are young, that are still developing, that I think could potentially slot into this team pretty well. I think Caleb Houston showed in this season that he has potential to potentially be a really big spark off the bench, a shooting guard that can play defense, like a 3-and-D type player. I think that going into his rookie season, when I was looking at Caleb Houston, I was like, man, this guy could potentially be like a Klay Thompson for us. I think that's a little optimistic thinking, but I don't think there's any reason to think that he could not be a guy who we could look at and be like, okay, this guy is going to give us the shooting that we need and also going to be a defensive stopper when Jalen Suggs is off the floor or something or whatnot, So I think Caleb Houston's a guy whose development I think we should be focusing on. I also think that Anthony Black as a big guard is someone you can look at because he just finished his rookie year. not too far off in terms of experience, NBA experience from Paolo Banchero. And like for me, like if I was looking at the window for Anthony Black to be really good, I think it depends on how Paolo plays this next season. If Paolo takes another huge step in his development next season, I think that it rushes Anthony Black's ability, like, of development a little bit, to where, like, if Anthony Black is not playing at a certain degree, maybe it's better to have him more as an asset than as a developmental piece who we're trying to really build off and make it to our point guard, you know. But if Paolo's development kind of stagnates in this next season or grows only a little bit, I think that Anthony Black has potential to have the time and really work towards becoming the point guard that this team wants and needs. He's big. He's a big guy. I think he's 6'7", right? And 6'7" dude who has shown that he is pretty good defensively here when he had his stretches with Fultz out of the lineup and whatnot, and early in that like December run, you know, November and December. And so I think that Anthony Black has shown flashes of like, okay, he can potentially be a guy we can look to going forward. But I think that it just depends on how well we are able to develop him and how much work he's putting in over the summer and how much work he's putting in the opportunities Jamal mostly gives him throughout the regular season and whatnot. So I think that next season I would not be surprised if we see Anthony Black as a regular starter. I also would not, or not regular starter, but regular bench player, depending on how we do in the offseason with our guard play and whatnot. I would also not be surprised if we see Caleb Houston enter the bench unit more. I think Jet Howard may have a little bit more of a ways to go, just considering his play so in the regular season when he was given an opportunity, and also looking at his development and play in the G League and whatnot. So I think Jet Howard could get there, but I'm not too certain on his development trajectory right now. But I think Anthony Black and Caleb Houston are two guys that you can really look at and be like, hey, these are guys we got. These are guys who we need to hopefully have hit on. Like Caleb Houston was, I think, a second round pick, right? So there's not as much pressure for Caleb, but Anthony Black was your guy in this draft. It was your first lottery pick in the draft last year. I think you have to hope to have hit on him, and hopefully we can see him develop into a great player. I think that he can certainly develop into the point guard that this team needs. But we'll see. But yeah, development and new acquisitions, we'll see as further rumors and information comes out as we approach the offseason after the playoffs, and also looking into more of what the front office may be thinking based on these interviews. But we'll see what happens. But I'm very excited. I'm very optimistic to see the Magic make moves in this offseason, and very excited to see what this team looks like in the next season going forward. Alright, to end the episode, we are going to be talking about the second round matchups of the NBA, because we are a Magic podcast, but we also just love basketball in general. And man, have things taken a turn that I did not think. Things have taken a turn that I did not expect. That is what I'm trying to say. Oh my goodness. So first off, Celtics blew out the Cavs. That was pretty expected. I am not expecting that series to go any more than 6. I would be surprised if it goes 6. I would expect it to be done in 7, to be honest, but we'll see what happens. The Knicks-Pacers series, Knicks take game 1. I think their game 2 is today, so we'll see how the Pacers fare. I honestly have not looked at the Knicks-Pacers series too in-depthly, so I'm not going to say too much about it, but I do say that I think the Knicks will probably take that one, but I don't think it will be an easy series. I think it'll probably be done in 6 as well, maybe 7, but we'll see how the Pacers play at home and how they respond to this game 1 loss for sure. Then we also had the Thunder Mavericks series going in their first game last night, and that was a pretty dominant performance by the OKC Thunder, pretty poor performance by Luka Doncic, and honestly, like, Shea might be the best player in the playoffs left right now. Granted, the Mavericks do not have the smoldering defense that the Timberwolves have been putting on, but the Thunder are taking care of business, man. They are undefeated in this playoffs, 5-0, and I would not be surprised if they end up in the conference finals in 5 or 6 games here. And as for the talk of the town, Minnesota taking 2 games from Denver in Denver. So Minnesota's up 2-0 going back home, and the Denver Nuggets are struggling, man. The Denver Nuggets held to 80 points in Game 2. Much closer game in Game 1, I believe, but Game 2 held to just 80 points without the Defensive Player of the Year on the Minnesota Timberwolves playing. It has been a crazy series, and like Karl Anthony Towns has been playing defense out of his mind. You saw that in Game 2. Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker giving Jamal Murray work. Jamal Murray is struggling, and this is a guy who we've constantly looked at being a playoff riser and a guy who is phenomenal in the playoffs, and he's struggling hard against this Minnesota defense, and it has just been wild to witness. Anthony Edwards is really coming into his own in that Game 1, had 40 points, and then Game 2, I mean, he didn't have like the game that he had in Game 1, but he still showed out, and the Timberwolves as a whole won that game too. Their defense, their team play as a whole, is what got them game 2 as well. And it's hard to see after seeing how Game 1 and 2 unfolded, unless we see Denver go 2-0 in these next 2 games. It's hard to see Denver coming out of the series now, man. It's hard to see Denver making a run here, because they just, like, Minnesota objectively has looked like the better team in these first 2 games, and it is wild to see and wild to say that, because I for sure thought that Denver was probably going to win this series and probably going to win the finals, but Minnesota has sure turned that narrative around, and I think that Minnesota at this point is the favorite behind Boston to win the title. And I mean, we might be sleeping on the Thunder. We might be sleeping on the Thunder here. But if the Thunder and Timberwolves match up in the conference finals, that is going to be a fun series, and I cannot wait. But we'll see if Denver can respond. We'll see. They have a great coach. They have the best player in the world, and we'll see if Denver can respond in Game 3 and Game 4. But it is looking bleak for Denver right now, and it is something I definitely did not expect. All right, that is all for this podcast episode today. Like I said, not too much being covered right now. There are a lot less games to cover, I believe, right now, and we'll see what happens with the rest of these playoffs. It'll be exciting to see who ends up taking home that Larry O'Brien trophy, and it's exciting to see where the Magic are going in the future. So I can't wait to stick around and find out live as things happen throughout these next few months what we're about to see take place, and I hope that you guys are along the ride with me. So thank you so much for listening. If you listened this far, once again, let me know if you have any recommendations or advice to how to make this podcast better, and I will see you guys next week. Have a blessed day. God loves you. Peace.